The best way to predict the future is to create it. Time is precious, time is money, and this is the time for Morning Talk on Atlantic Television Network. Television Network right here in the city of Port Harcourt. This is the network's medium of bringing the happenings in the economy sector of society to our discerning viewers. This program is aimed at bringing to the doorstep of viewers the business, financial and economic activities from all strata of society. Its deliveries are centered through the various stock exchanges across the world, news about government economic activities, private sector business activities, laced with expert opinion, stakeholders analysis, and correspondence reports. First, the headlines on state of emergency: reverse pipeline explosion may cost $35.3 million loss daily. And Edo State Ekwebolo to probe Obaseki's $10 million spending on newspaper. In maritime, customs records 18.9 billion naira daily revenue collection at Apapa Port. On tariff, Sokoto kept during an unscheduled visit to the premises of the Observer Titles on Tuesday, where he led top officials of his administration to inspect the facilities. However, the governor and his team were surprised to find they could not access the buildings where the machines purportedly purchased by the previous administration were meant to be kept. The once vibrant media organization was shut down by Obaseki with the intention of revamping it to compete with national dailies. Okwebelo, visibly upset by the lack of access to the facilities, vowed to return for another inspection to verify the presence of the machines and equipment that were said to have been bought with taxpayers' money under Obaseki's administration. Speaking about the visit, Okwebelo said, "I visited Observer newspaper company to see for myself the money that was claimed to have been spent by the former governor Godwin Obaseki on revamping the state-owned media house. The former governor claimed to have spent $10 million to revamp the newspaper house just before the elections. However, everywhere was locked and there was nothing inside. I couldn't even find a cleaner, and those we met on site were not actual employees of the organization." Nigeria Customs Service has raised its daily revenue to 18.9 billion naira at Apapa Port, breaking the previous record of 18.2 billion naira achieved in October. Revenue collected on March 2 of the command. The area controller of the Apapa Command, Dr. Babatunde Olomu, said dedication to duty, sustenance of compliance as a norm, and promotion of industrial harmony in Apapa Port contributed to the achievement. Our record-breaking achievement of 18.9 billion naira daily collection is the beginning of greater exploits to be attained this year. We are also not lowering our guard in the fight against smuggling, as our officers are ever ready to detect concealment, under declaration, false declaration, and other antics geared towards duty evasion, he said. Olomu further stated that the ports are critical national assets to keep the ports working, especially Apapa Port, which accounts for the highest volume of cargo coming into Nigeria. The controller, acting under the directives of the Controller General of Customs of port activities, and promoted productivity with seamless import and export activities. In line with the directives of the CGC, which has promoted robust stakeholder engagement as one of its cardinal trusts, we intervened in disputes involving sister government agencies, terminal operators, and stakeholders in the port. It is heartwarming to note that our intervention succeeded in promoting uninterrupted trade and strengthening port users' confidence, he stated. Consumers of electricity and telecommunications in Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara states have expressed concern over the high rates of tariff and called for downward review. The consumers passionately pleaded with government, companies, and other relevant stakeholders to consider the plight of Nigerians and reverse the recent increment for the good of all. They made their position known in separate interviews with the news agency of Nigeria, NAN, in response to the recent tariff hike. The consumers expressed disappointment over the increased tariff amidst epileptic or poor service delivery from the service providers. A civil servant in Sokoto, Malam Ismaila Umar, described the tariff hike as a source of punishment to Nigerians, especially in recognition of the already difficult situation that engulfed the citizens. Umar observed that a middle-level civil servant cannot afford a bag of 50 kilogram rice, talk less of other house needs, while transport fares and children's school fees are other obligations that must be attended to. Electricity and telecommunication services, given the economic hardship being faced by Nigerians, and urge government and other stakeholders to streamline action towards a modest way of alleviating the hardship. A community activist in Sokoto State, Mr. Sanusi Saraki, said previously he used to spend 6,000 naira monthly on data. However, at present, I spent about 28,000 naira. Saraki complained that despite the telecom tariff hike, the network was highly unfriendly, poor and non-conducive, adding that many businesses were affected. According to him, the same thing applies to electricity companies, saying that the supply had deteriorated, thereby crippling many businesses as well as formal and non-formal communication. He urged the power distribution companies to ensure steady and consistent electricity supply to their customers. A journalist, Mr. Suleiman Nasser, lamented that in spite of the increase in tariff by the telecom service providers in most cases, the network was bad, which often affects his work. We are not enjoying quality network from the service providers. This is exploitation. The price of data now triple its previous price. They are just exploiting Nigerians, he said. According to him, the 3,000 naira data he used to buy previously now costs about 9,000 naira, and most time the network will be very poor to facilitate seamless work. On electricity, Nasser cited areas like Dambua, Offa Road, 12 hours of electricity supply in a day. He said the situation had coerced some residents to procure power generating sets to generate energy for both business and personal use. To unravel the truth surrounding the alleged sponsorship of terrorism in the polity, the House of Representatives has called on the country director of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, to explain the usage of funds at its status, among other demands, for or disbursed. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lokpobiri, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, and Niger Delta leaders have reiterated the need for sustained development in oil-producing communities through effective implementation of the Host Communities Development Fund under the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA. During a stakeholders engagement session in Yenagua, Bayelsa State, JV, for sustaining its strategic partnership with Kefeso HCDT, he urged community leaders to prioritize peace and stability, warning that unrest and insecurity could disrupt oil operations and affect remittances to the Host Community Fund. Speaking at the event, NNPCL Chief Upstream Investment Officer Sheyi Omotowa said the company remains committed to ensuring that the 3% Host Community Funds prescribed by the PIA is channeled towards critical collaboration among stakeholders is vital for achieving long-term socio-economic development in the region. Also speaking, the Executive Commissioner for Safety, Environment and Community at the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, John Laga, representing NUPRC CEO Benga Komolafe, described the institutionalization of the Host Community Development Trust as a milestone in Nigeria's petroleum sector. KFSO HCDT for its commitments to sustainable development. He also lauded the NUPRC for incorporating over one. Federal government deducted 800 billion naira from state allocations in 2024 to service foreign debts and other contractual obligations, according to the latest FAAC quarterly review released by the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. In a statement on Tuesday by the Acting Director of Communication and Stakeholders Management, NEITI, Mrs. Obiageli Honora, the agency noted that the report highlighted the financial strain on states due to debt repayments, despite record high disbursements from the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee. The statement revealed that total FAAC allocations reached 15.26 trillion naira in 2024, marking a 43% increase from the previous year. The surge was attributed to fiscal reforms, including the removal of fuel subsidies and exchange rate adjustments, which significantly boosted oil revenue remittances. A breakdown of the disbursements showed that the federal government received 4.95 trillion naira, state governments got 5.81 trillion naira, and local governments were allocated 3.77 trillion naira. The report noted that state governments recorded the highest percentage increase in allocation. Despite the higher allocations, states faced significant deductions, with 800 billion naira removed at source for foreign debt servicing and other obligations. The representing over 20% of total deductions. Kaduna followed with 51.2 billion naira, while Rivers and Bauchi had 38.6 billion naira and 37.2 billion naira respectively. The report warned that several states with high debt burdens also ranked lower in FAAC allocations, raising concerns about their fiscal sustainability and ability to fund critical projects. The statement read, the review highlighted that total debt deductions for states, foreign debts and other contractual obligations amounted to 800 billion naira, representing 12.3% of total allocations to the 36 states, including derivation revenue. Will continue to load for export as it currently sources all its crude stock from the international market in dollars. The refinery's National Petroleum Company (NNPC) Limited on October 1, 2024. The government commenced the sale of crude oil in naira to local refineries to improve supply, save the country millions of dollars in petroleum products imports, and ultimately reduce the pump prices of refined products. Earlier in March, NNPC Limited denied unilaterally suspending the naira for crude oil swap deal with domestic refiners, including Dangote Refinery and other. The company, in a statement issued by its Chief Corporate Communications Officer, Mr. Olufemi Oshonaye, clarified that the contract for the sale of crude oil in naira was structured as a 6-month agreement. It also said the agreement was subject to availability and expires at the end of March 2025. Contentious $2.4 billion divestment of Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited (SPDC) to Renaissance Africa Energy Holdings has taken a new turn as Global Gas and Refining Limited (GGRL) intensifies its legal battle over the development. Condemning the divestment, the company accused Shell and the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission (NUPRC) of flouting a federal high court order. The escalating dispute not only threatens the high-profile transaction but also exposes deeper systemic issues in Nigeria's judicial and regulatory landscape. 2024. The case filed by Global Gas against Shell and NUPRC includes an existing court order that, according to the order made available to the media, prohibits any action on the divestment until the litigation is closed. Yellowy argued that Shell's move represents a flagrant disregard for Nigeria's judiciary, raising critical questions about the enforceability of court directives in the face of multinational corporate interests. The company also decried the role of the upstream oil and gas regulator headed by Chief Executive Benga Komolafe. Global Gas alleges that NUPRC's alleged approval of the sale violates both a pending motion for injunction and a binding affidavit of undertaking submitted to the court. The affidavit reportedly committed NUPRC to preserving the status quo pending the case's resolution, an obligation the company claims was discarded. Global Gas insisted that Shell's conduct risks eroding investor confidence by signaling that court orders can be ignored with impunity. The company noted that the divestment favors foreign players at the expense of indigenous firms. The legal dispute is being fueled by a 20-year feud between Global Gas and SPDC, during which the former claims its $500 million investment was frustrated by Shell's alleged acts of deliberate obstruction. The divestment, Global Gas argues, is an attempt by Shell to undermine accountability for past grievances while the matter remains sub judice. APM Terminal, the special advisor to the Oyo State government, Tilewa Folami, along with agricultural commodities importers and exporters to add commodities to Apapa Port, not seen, stated. Accompanying the APM Terminals team were Denmark's Consul General, Trade Councillor Jet Jerome, and the Commercial Trade Advisor to the Danish Consulate, Victoria Epele. Jerome highlighted Denmark's commercial involvement in Nigeria, particularly in enhancing the agricultural value chain. She noted that Denmark aims to support local interests in agriculture, energy, and livestock exports with government-backed cold chain initiatives to strengthen market access. Meanwhile, following efforts emphasizing ongoing road construction projects, including the Shaki-Benin route, to enhance connectivity. He stressed the strategic importance of the Apapa-Moniya rail service in logistics planning, particularly as the area is set to host a new city and the largest market in West Africa in partnership with France. It would be beneficial if APM Terminals could share weekly and monthly updates with APM Terminals and the Oyo State government to drive investment as well as feasibility of cargo consolidation at the terminal. ECA Antonio Pedro has said that the African Continental Free Trade Area, a key project of the African Union's Agenda 2063, requires an estimated $411 billion for transportation infrastructure to support efficient intracontinental trade. Speaking at this year's Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development in Addis Ababa recently, he said the AFCFCTA serves both as a development blueprint and a powerful political platform, and a prosperous Africa presents a significant market for businesses. Pedro acknowledged that Africa must first cover AFCFCTA as a result of over 6 decades of persistent efforts toward regional and continental economic integration. Today, about 85% of Africa's total exports is directed to the world, to the rest of the world, with a strong concentration in primary commodities that account for over 60% of the total. This contrasts with the composition of intra-African trade, which, although relatively small, is more diversified and dominated by industrial products. This is where AFCFCTA is expected to be a game changer. He said the latest empirical assessments indicate that reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers within the continent, as outlined with sector. Industry stakeholders have challenged the recent inflation put out is not reflecting in the cost of goods and services. According to the NBS, Nigeria's inflation rate dropped for the second consecutive month in February, falling to 23.18% from 24.4%. The February 2025 figure represented an 8.52 percentage points decrease year on year. Reacting, macroeconomic business and policy analyst Vincent Wani said the new inflation numbers are simply a mechanical outcome of the rebasing exercise that was done by the government. It is like being the judge and executioner in your own case. Government has seen the high inflation numbers as an embarrassment to their performance and has worked very hard to present a new number that does not capture our reality. However, for businesses and Nigerians, the reality is completely different. While government numbers show an improvement on paper, the reality in the business environment and markets in terms of prices remains a huge concern. The inflation number coming down is a book exercise and does not reflect the situation on ground. The truth of the matter is that the price of goods and services are not coming down. There is no way anyone can convince any analyst that the 50% jump in telecom services, both data and calls, that we witnessed about a month ago do not factor into the inflation figure, including polytechnics. The initiative aligns with efforts to improve the quality of technical education and drive economic growth through renewable energy adoption. The federal government approved 100 billion naira for the National Public Sector Solarization Initiative to provide clean energy solutions to public institutions, aiming to reduce electricity costs and reliance on diesel generators. This funding is part of a broader drive to establish Nigeria as West Africa's renewable energy hub. In addition to the NPSSI, the REA is implementing large-scale renewable and clean energy projects by financing. The $750 million distributed energy service project, the largest government-funded renewable initiative in Africa, is already underway, including 14 interconnected mini-grids aimed at expanding energy access. Further support is expected through a $200 million co-financing deal with Japan and a $700 million African Development Bank investment, bringing total funding to nearly $1.7 billion. REA is also catalyzing private sector participation, expecting $1.1 billion in private investment for the project alone. Beyond electrification, efforts are being made to localize solar panel and lithium battery production, with new gigawatt scale manufacturing plants being developed in Nigeria. This makes most polytechnics a good ground for the government to power and upgrade to skilled development hubs. The REA's managing director reaffirmed the agency's commitment to expanding sustainable energy access in educational institutions, referencing the Energizing Education program, which has already delivered solar hybrid power plants to several federal universities and teaching hospitals. Currently in its third phase, the EEP aims to provide clean electricity to 20 universities and 3 teaching hospitals, including improving learning environments and fostering innovation. Beyond power institutions, the Polytechnic Committee also advocated for establishing solar energy training centers to equip students with skills in solar technology, installation and maintenance. This move, they argued, would boost employability and contribute to Nigeria's growing renewable energy sector. Liquidity crisis in Nigeria's power sector is worsening as Transnational Corporation PLC Transcorp has revealed that the federal government owes its power subsidiaries about 650 billion naira for and expand power generation capacity. Nigeria's power sector has long been marred by chronic liquidity challenges, resulting in unstable electricity supply, poor infrastructure, and the inability of power generation and distribution companies to meet consumer demands. The sector's financial struggles are largely attributed to delayed payments by government agencies, particularly through the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, which acts as the intermediary between electricity generators and distribution companies. Similarly, despite Nigeria's abundant natural gas reserves, gas supply constraints continue to hamper power generation. A long-standing challenge in the sector is the inefficient electricity tariff structures, which have historically been set too low to recover the cost of generation, transmission, and distribution. Despite the increase in Band A tariff shortfall accounts for the 1.9 trillion debt in 2024, as this goes alone owed 155 billion naira of the energy they received. Speaking on the crisis, President and Group CEO of Transcorp, Dr. Owen Omogiafo, stressed that the 650 billion naira owed to the company is stifling growth and investment in the sector. This is not due to a lack of capacity but liquidity challenges. If we are not paid for the power we generate, it becomes difficult to reinvest, expand capacity, and address Nigeria's electricity shortfall, she said. We go on a quick break, and when we return, we head straight to the foreign exchange market and what the current exchange rate is today. Do stay tuned. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. And now on to the foreign market. Wall Street's main indexes were poised for a higher opening on Wednesday ahead of the Federal Reserve's widely anticipated monetary policy decision at a time when worries about trade policies and their impact on the economy have rattled investors. The central bank is expected to leave its benchmark overnight interest rate unchanged, and the work will be on new economic projections from policymakers that will give an idea of how they feel U.S. President Donald Trump's policies will affect economic growth, inflation, and unemployment. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is scheduled to speak later in the day. The European Union will tighten steel import quotas to reduce inflows by a further 15% from April, a senior EU official said, in a move aimed at E-minis were up 12.75 points or 0.23%, and Nasdaq 100 E-minis were up 68.5 points or 0.35%. U.S. stocks have come under severe selling pressure in the recent weeks after a raft of economic indicators signaled the cooling of the U.S. economy amid trade policy uncertainties. Multiple companies have also lowered their annual forecast, the latest being General Mills, The Pillsbury owner lowered its annual sales outlook, sending its shares down 4.3% in pre-market trading. The benchmark S&P 500 index confirmed last week it was in correction following a 10% drop from its recent high. The tech-heavy Nasdaq also confirmed a correction on March 6, while the blue chip Dow is about 2% away from the correction threshold. Financials lifted Indian shares for a third straight session on Wednesday, with mid-caps logging their best day in 9 months as investors scooped up cheaper stocks on easing valuations. The NSE Nifty 50 gained 0.32% to 22,907.60, while the BSE Sensex closed 0.2% higher than 75,549.05. Daily revenue collection at Apapa Port. Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara consumers seek downward review on terrorism funding. Reps demand explanation on U.S. aid funds utilization. And in economic growth, Minister NNPC push for host community development fund implementation. Don't forget we are open for advertisements, bookings and commercials. You can connect with us on all our 18 socials on Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, on Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, on Twitter at Atlantic TV Net, or you can watch us live on our website at www.atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress. I am Favor Chikwesri Michael. Thank you for watching, and up next is ATM Politics.